I'm the founder and director of Horse Sense North, and I work with horses and people to do all kinds of like horse work for personal growth, for leadership and team development, but most of all for trauma recovery. And I think it's important to note that because I have to do the same things for myself. And the horses teach me the same lessons that we work with for other people. So the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that around like, what is it that I really need to do or have done to help myself, like find the energy to recharge, to refuel, to heal myself, really. Mm-hmm. The first thing is permission.
Wow. And I say wow because I don't think anybody really thinks about that. Giving yourself the permission to do it.
I hope to live. I want to live. I choose to if I get the choice.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't get the choice, it's okay. And I spent the second half of my time in that classroom in that place of knowing. And so when I left the school and I had that moment of breathing in my first breath of air and feeling the sun on my face in this new life affirming way, it was with this fear of death that seemed to have left me. So that was a big piece of the post-traumatic growth of, if I'm not afraid to die anymore, then I don't have to be afraid to live anymore.
That felt good. It felt good because like you describing it gave me a calm. Like I feel like this. It's like just like a calm in my spirit. And I agree with you. I would never say thank for that moment. But I do feel like God used certain moments to reshape us in a way, reshape our thoughts and our emotions and where he wants us to go and show up. And it's almost like you got like this release that you needed and this peace over you that said, Carmen, you are going to be okay. And despite what happens, you are still going to be okay. And I'm going to lead you to where you are supposed to be in life and bring you back to where I want you to be. It's that sense of knowing that there's something that has you, you know? And that's an amazing feeling because a lot of times as parents, we send our kids to school. And one of the things that I fear are those things happening. So every morning I literally take the time with them and I let my son go first, then my daughter, then me. And I pray over the whole entire school, the teachers, superintendents, the students, that the students will be in alignment with each student and each teacher. Because I find that when situations like that happen, everybody's in panic mode, like you said, but we all need to coordinate together to keep each other calm and safe.
Yeah.
So you say that, and it gave me another like reassurance that regardless of what happens, I know that my kids will be safe and that I introduce them to something and then they have the opportunity to decide if that's not what they believe in, but they know that there is a creator that will protect them regardless. And sometimes my son will say, he says to me today, he's like, Mom, sometimes I just say a little prayer. I said, when do you say a little prayer? He says, just whenever I'm feeling a certain way or something, or just whenever I just say a little one. And I'm like, that's good. Because I pray that you'll be a light for your friends and people that you're around in school, that if something were to happen, you can keep them calm as you're calm in yourself, right? So you gave me that sense of like, just knowing that it will be okay. And it's hard to always know that, but what would you have said if you look back? Is there anything that you would say that should be changed or done differently within the school system in situations like that?
As far as the actual day of, I couldn't tell you specifically. What I can say is that I'm just so grateful for the first responders that day. They did a phenomenal job. Afterwards, I know there was a lot to be desired because It was left to the teachers to support students. And I was really lucky. And this is again where I feel like I've been given tremendous privilege in my life in so many ways. And one of them is through that time in that program, because I was studying social services and it was on the teachers to process it with us. Well, our teachers were counselors and therapists and people who were working in social services who were there to teach us how to be in those roles too.
Yeah.
And so they were, of course, struggling, but at bare minimum, they were able to show up in a way that was validating, that could facilitate important, healthy conversation, that was compassionate to everyone's perspective and experience, that wasn't afraid to have those conversations. And we talked about it for like the next couple of weeks. Like that was our primary time in class. So I had 2 weeks of therapy in school, basically in a group setting,
Hmm.
because of the program that I was in. I would not have had the same experience in any other program. I know many other students at the time who had a teacher, and no fault to the teachers because they went through this as well. But they got to the front of their class, they're an English teacher, or they're a gym teacher, or fill in the blank, engineering. And they're
Yeah.
going, okay, everybody good? Great.
Yeah.
Moving on. Right. Because they're struggling and they don't have those tools or skills.
Hmm.
So fair enough. And I think that that is a failing of the college. At the time, I have no idea what the policies are like now, but I didn't actually hear about any like encouragement to seek counseling on site. I didn't hear about any professionals that were supportive. And maybe there were, maybe I didn't hear about it because of the program was in. So I want to put that out there that I don't know. But I didn't hear anyone else talking about it either who
Yeah.
were not supported in the ways that I was. So I think that whether we're talking about this specific incident with Dawson or any other, and I'm sure, again, Dawson's learned a lot from it. It's been many years now. I have no idea what
Yeah.
the policies are now. But whether we're talking about a system or an institution, or whether we're talking about a family or a friend who's been through something really big and hard, we don't actually need to necessarily have all these different social work skills. What we need to do is to really deeply care and listen. So the same themes as what we've been talking about, the same theme of compassion and shut up, parent, or shut
Yeah.
up, friend, or shut up,
Yeah.
teacher. Listen. And
Listen.
whatever comes out of people's mouths, unless it's about threatening harm to somebody, is okay.
It's okay.
It's all okay. And just to let it have space, to not be afraid of those feelings, to not be afraid of what the experience is, because that is what helps people feel like they're not a problem, that they're not defective, that they're not at fault, that they can actually be complete and whole in their experience of this, even in their struggle. And I think that's really, really important.
I agree. I agree. And the shut up and listen aspect. And if you don't understand, shut up and listen and just give compassion. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
How did you move from surviving to thriving, especially in the face of family and societal expectations?
Well, the horses, I really have to give a tremendous amount of credit here.
Yeah.
Although I had this awakening moment, if you will, during that school shooting, and it was a major pivot in my life, it's a different thing to then continue integrating and continue, you know, do that shift from survive to thrive, which I'm still doing. I think that's a
Hmm.
lifelong process of figuring that out, because there's stuff that still comes up. There's stuff that still I'm like, oh, that's an old pattern, or oh, that's whatever. I don't actually want to be stuck in that right now.
Right?
I want to be thriving and I'm not. So let's figure this out. But figuring that out and practicing a different way with horses was so beneficial, because it got me out of my head and into my body. And so much of our patterns, and this is not just about me, I really believe this is about all mammals, all people too, included, is that we have these patterns in our nervous system. It's like muscle memory. And so we have this muscle memory in the way that we're wired in our brain, in our physiology around survival. And so we have these patterns of muscle memory to reach for the things that helped us stay safe in the moments where we were just barely surviving. But that doesn't help us thrive. And so how do we change the patterns? We practice something else. It's like for anyone who's musical, let's say we're learning how to play something on the guitar. We learn certain chord progressions with our fingers. We learn certain movements with our fingers. So it's like really muscle memory with our fingers.
Mm-hmm.
We can learn the incorrect movements for that song. And then what do we have to do to then learn the correct movements? Practice, 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 practice,
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
And still, we're going to find ourselves, if we learned the incorrect movements first, we're going to find ourselves, oops, going back to that one every so often, even after we've practiced it 10,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
And so the same is true for us. And that's okay. It's okay to have our oops moments, but to develop muscle memory in something else means going through a pretty intensive process of unlearning
And relearning.
and then relearning, which is a lot more effort. And for the vast majority of people on this planet, that is the work. That's the work. And it's okay that it takes way longer than we think it should take. It's okay that it's harder than we think it should be. Of course, it's not okay. I wish it wasn't true. But
Mm-hmm.
to like really hold that compassion for ourselves, that of course it takes a long time because we have so much muscle memory. But the way we do that, if I'm just thinking about practicing a different chord progression on the guitar, that's not the same thing as actually practicing it with my physical body. And so that's where the horses have really taught me so much, because I'm practicing being in relationship, not just in my head, but actually in the moment at a visceral nervous system level. They can tell when I'm masking. They can tell when I'm suppressing emotion. They can tell when I'm stressed, when I'm anxious, when I'm angry, when I'm actually calm, when I'm actually feeling grounded, when I'm actually empowered and asking them to do something with a healthy assertiveness. Or am I doing it from a place of control and anxiety? They're going to know the difference spot on. And so whether we have horses in our life or not, practicing in different ways with the people in our life, with ourselves through practices that create calm in our nervous system, that help us regulate, I think is one of the most important things we can do. Because otherwise we get trapped in our head, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not our head that we can think our way out of trauma and other survival pieces. It's through the body.
It's like an energetic connection, right?
It is. It's an energetic connection. It's a physiological connection. There's like measurable pieces in this, right? So even as humans, if I'm suppressing emotion, it creates a higher blood pressure. It creates higher heart rate because
Mm-hmm.
it takes more energy for the body to suppress. I'm also constricting. And so I'm kind of constricting in the way that my blood flow is, the way that my nervous system is functioning. I will be able to have less of my brain online, so to speak, when I'm in a state of stress and when I'm in that state of protection. So how do I move from a state of protection to security? I think is the same question as how do I move from surviving to thriving? And it's how do I help my body move from that state of protecting and survival? And how do I help my body move into that state of thriving or more security? So that physiological things like our breath work, like doing things that really create that shift in our nervous system, so that when we are in a moment of higher stress or tension with another person,
Mm-hmm.
we have more muscle memory to help us get through it in a good way.
I agree. And you talk about the even if we don't have horses in our life, because I'm not blessed and I don't in that area to have a horse in my backyard. But it's the same thing as relationships because I always tell people I call people and I'm like, how are you doing? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. No, something's wrong. Well, how do you know something's wrong? I just know I feel it. And it goes back to connection. When you have relationships and you connect just not on that level of, okay, we're communicating, we're friends, we go out, we have fun, but you're connecting to the soul, you can actually feel when something's off with that person in your life. So I understand what you're saying
Absolutely.
with with the horses. They can feel that energy that you carry. The way you said, hey, the way that you stroked its back today, that wasn't the stroke you gave me yesterday. Doesn't feel the same.
Doesn't feel
So
the same.
I
Exactly.
understand.
Yeah. And I think seeing how these horses that have, again, no mask, no inhibitors, are just experiencing and responding to what's true in the moment. we act, and just like you said, we feel that with others too. We're just so conditioned to block that, to undermine
Mhm.
it, to have our brain get in the way, to invalidate ourselves. Where you asked the question about abuse at the beginning of our chat, so often we become our worst abusers. So often we become the person who's our worst bully in our own head, where we're really undermining ourselves, where we're really gaslighting ourselves about what we're actually experiencing, instead of honoring the fact that, hey, when your friend says that they're fine and they're not, and you know that they're not, that you believe yourself, whether your friend wants to talk about it or not, right? But you can trust your knowing. You can trust what you're picking up, because it's actually contagious. Those things are contagious physiologically. There's lots of science to kind of catch up to that now about what people have known for so long.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, it's real. It's a real thing. And so it's wonderful to have horses or whoever, a good friend, um, even a dog or a cat or whoever is in our life that can just honor what's actually true and happening inside of ourselves. Back to that permission word, give us permission
Mhm.
to believe ourselves.
Can you explain how you coach people and how it works with healing through horses? Can you take us down, your daily routine of when you're coaching somebody and the practices that you do to use the horses to connect to humans to heal?
Yes, absolutely. So, first, I'll say we don't do any riding in the kind of horse work that we do. It's all on the foot.
No.
And that's because it'll. I have nothing against riding. I ride myself. But it's important to, if we're really engaging with horses for this purpose, to give the horse as much voice and choice as we possibly can in how they're interacting with us, so that we get the most honest responses from them possible. And so we have a person who's spending time with them in what we call a round pen, which is a circular enclosure where the horse is loose. They're free in that area. And then the person gets to interact with this horse in a way that's really about exploring relationship. There's not a right or wrong way. It's not about they have to accomplish a certain task or goal. It's learning how to be with the horses in a way that the horse feels calm and you feel calm, and where connection can be possible. And it's okay if we don't find those things right off the bat. But that process of what do we find? What do we discover as we explore this, as we kind of see what comes up in us as we are just being together for a few moments? That is huge learning, because all of those patterns that we have from other parts of our life tend to show up in the ring with the horse. And then it's not just about, oh, well, now it's just repeating patterns. It's okay. Now we're seeing those patterns. We're getting a clear idea of what they are, what they feel like in the body. And now we're learning how to shift them. Now we're learning how to transform them into something else, so that we also get to rewrite the story. So we get to rewrite the pattern and the story in our body, even if it's not with another person. Yes, these patterns are probably created with a lot of other people, but this relationship with this horse is still a relationship where we get to rewrite our story and practice something different and something healthier, something that's mutually respectful, something that is based in safety and connection, and where we get to be our authentic selves finally, because the horse doesn't want to be with us unless we're being our authentic self, because
Right.
they're going, oh, what are you hiding? And should I be concerned because you're hiding something?
Mhm.
And so it makes them feel a little bit less interested or even guarded, until we learn how to just be
Mhm.
and be in that place with them of just being together. And that can be really beautiful and transformative. And as far as our work, how we do that is we have human to human time first. So we kind of go through some stuff person to person, preparing for our horse session, talking about the intention of the day. If someone's coming with maybe some personal intentions or goals, of course, we don't know what's going to happen with the horses. The horse is kind of leading the show.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, people, it seems every time actually that people have an intention, and in some way it is met, sometimes way more, sometimes in a different way than they were expecting, but nonetheless it's addressing that reason that they're here. And sometimes people don't have a specific intention. They just are feeling like this is the right time for me to do this. Or
Mhm.
I'm just generally feeling stuck and I don't know what else to try. We have also had a lot of people who come who've been over therapized. They've done thousands of hours of therapy and they're still stuck and they need something that can get them get unstuck. And this often is what it is. And so we do that human to human preparing, practicing some tools that are going to help when we're with the horses so we can access more of that being, so we can create more calm in our body, have our horse experience, and then we talk about it and we kind of process it together and pull from it to kind of help us understand what our strengths and skills were there, and also how we can transform what we learned with the horse back into our human lives. So building that bridge back into our human world. So sometimes people come for one session, sometimes people come for many sessions on a regular basis, sometimes people come for a workshop or part of a longer program. But no matter what it is, I think about it like they're receiving the medicine of the horse. They're receiving some kind of horse medicine. And sometimes we just need a drop and sometimes we need a lot more. But no
Mhm.
matter what it is, it really helps us to get unstuck and move from thriving or from surviving to thriving.
Right. And you've worked with thousands of horses and humans. What are one to two key lessons that horses have taught you that apply to breaking generational cycles?
Okay, two things that horses have taught me about breaking generational cycles and taught the people that I've witnessed.
Yep.
This, I think, really comes back to our earlier themes in the conversation, where if we want to break those generational themes, as we need to, we are given permission just by existing
Hmm.
to really embrace our power and our vulnerability, that we're allowed and meant to be vulnerable and heart-centered beings. And we're allowed and meant to be empowered people. And that we don't have to sacrifice either. And when we can learn how to embody that, not just understand it as a concept, but embody this combination of strength and vulnerability at the same time, that's where we start to break generational cycles, because we're not sacrificing ourselves in some way. We're not sacrificing a part of who we are anymore. And so can we give ourselves permission to be whole finally and once again?
Generational cycle, it runs deep. And that is my theme for this season is breaking generational cycles is a lifestyle because it becomes embedded in us. It's a thing that we do and we're constantly working to figure out those patterns that are within our family that were never told to us, but we see it showing up consistently so we know. And what would you say are some patterns and cycles in your family that you noticed
Yeah.
that you had to, break away from and unlearn?
Yeah. Well, I'll put in the context of what I was sharing about, because on one side, it was really around the generational cycle of using power and control to protect, and actually in harmful ways.
Mhm.
So avoiding vulnerability, swinging so hard on that pendulum to use power in abusive ways, where there was physical violence in parts of that family history. There was a lot of different kinds of colonization violence. There was all kinds of ways that on that particular part of my family, it was just expected that you don't show weakness. You just do things that show that you can be controlling and you can be powerful, because weakness or vulnerability is dangerous. And
Mhm.
so that cycle of believing that vulnerability is dangerous had to be broken. And then on the flip side, not being empowered. So on my mother's side, there's all kinds of reasons in their lineage why disempowerment was expected, why we should not have a voice, why we should be very careful about standing up to abusers, why we should be very careful about doing those kinds of things because it meant danger. And so it's kind of both sides of the pendulum. One pendulum swung really hard one way, where it's like, be disempowered, but it's okay to be in your heart, but
Mhm.
you can't actually do anything with it. And then the other side is, don't be in your heart and only be in this place of control and power. And so the healing is to find the middle ground of, we need both, but not in harmful ways, and allowing them to work together, where we have our heart online at the same time as feeling capable of setting the boundaries, of knowing that I deserve the boundaries, of having that energy of grounded, healthy empowerment while
Mhm.
keeping my heart open. That middle ground is the generational healing. And I think that it's not just my family. I think that that's a very broad spectrum way to look at all kinds of intergenerational trauma and generational trauma, where we've been fractured, and we're fractured away from our core. We're fractured away from our healthy empowerment. We're fractured away from what we know to be true inside. And so how do we heal that is to give ourselves permission to know that just by existing, we have a birthright to have something better.
Right. Giving yourself permission to do better because you can, and not be tied down by those generational cycles. I agree. And you support first responders in trauma recovery. What have you learned about healing and resilience from working with the population?
Yeah. So we work with people from all walks of life, and we primarily serve those who serve others. So working with um, firefighters, police, military, EMS, frontline people in all kinds of ways, nurses, doctors, social workers, people who are public safety personnel.
Mhm.
And we support this population the most, in part because of my experiences, because I wouldn't be alive today without them.
Yeah.
And also because, as a member of the community, of any community, but where I'm living or anywhere, I really appreciate the people who are serving our communities or trying to. And I'll say trying to because I know that it's complicated, especially with certain groups. I believe that a lot of the people who get into these roles get into them because they've also come from harmful, abusive pasts, and they're
Mhm.
trying to make some kind of positive difference. What has been so unfortunate is that there is a very strong culture within these organizations and systems that causes more harm, both in how people end up showing up in the community, as
Yes.
well as how they're blocked from showing up for themselves when they are struggling. And so the vast majority of public safety personnel that we support here, it's not the call that was the most traumatic that ended up
Mhm.
having them take the stress leave. I'm not saying there's not terrible calls that do create that. Of course there are. And we are actually built as human beings, first responders or not, to be resilient creatures. But we're built to be resilient within community. We're built to
Yeah.
be resilient within systems that support our healing, not to have it happen, hard things happen over and over again, and not have a community to then support our healing process, to not protect our vulnerability with us. And so
Mhm.
we have these systems that are actively dismissing and making vulnerability dangerous. And when we make vulnerability dangerous, we make it dangerous for everybody. And so the number one reason I find that people end up going on these stress leaves and going off of work is because of organizational trauma and
Yes.
sanctuary trauma. And so the individual first responder and police, we work with a lot of police here, the individual person really wants to make positive change and often is blocked in so many ways, both in
Mhm.
their personal life and in the external world. So as we create more and more of a culture shift of healing, that necessarily translates into the communities that people serve as well. It's a drop in the bucket, but it is something. And I really believe that this culture shift is not just necessary in policing or in EMS or in any of the first responder or public safety personnel worlds. It's a culture shift that we need globally. It's a culture shift that we need especially in these colonized Western societies, where we are looking at people through a lens of productivity and what can they get us, instead of looking at people through a lens of course we're worthy and deserving of honor and respect and dignity, and
Right.
everyone deserves healing and support.
Right.
So how do we just make that happen? And I think that when we learn how to care for ourselves and learn to care for the people in our life in a way that's actually healthy and in our communities, then that is a ripple effect that I believe in deeply, because it's that community of care that can change everything and has to.
I agree. The community of care. And we all have to have it equally. And we all have to agree and give all ourselves permission to do it together as a community. That's the only way that we bring about change. I know people are like, how do we bring about change? There's corruption, there's this, there's that. People just don't understand. But it's through understanding and each of us sharing our experiences and letting people know that it's okay to share yours and give yourself permission to give yourself compassion. If there's anyone listening right now that feels stuck in their pain, in their past, unsure where to go, unsure where to begin, unsure what direction to take and start with their healing, what would you say to them right now?
Well, the feeling of being unsure is something already to honor, because there's an awareness that there's something that needs addressing. So if you're at the point listening where you're feeling unsure, I just first want to really honor the fact that you have a knowing inside of you, even if you don't know the next step right now,
Mhm.
that there's a knowing inside of you that deserves to be honored. And you don't have to know all the next steps. Just find the next step. And the next step might be to call someone who's a safe person for you, depending on where we're at. Maybe that's just the most important thing. Maybe it's to call 988, which is the suicide helpline, right? Maybe, or prevention line. Whether it's to watch a video that gives you some tools. There are millions, billions of resources now. We live in a time where there's so much information that it's information overload, but it's also potentially very supportive. So don't look at all the videos. Choose one that is connected to what you're navigating. And if it doesn't feel right, stop and find something that does feel right. And so, I think again, the biggest piece is, how can we really honor what we are feeling, give ourselves permission to know what we know. And very often when people say, I don't know the next step, you do know the next step. You don't maybe know
Mhm.
all the next steps, but there's one thing that's kind of like in your awareness, circling around. You're not sure. Maybe there's nothing, and that's where you reach out to someone, you reach out to a hotline, something like that. If there's really nothing, there are resources there. But so often there's that one little next step, but we're like, but I can't do that. But I shouldn't do that. But that's, I can't, I don't, that would be wrong. We talk ourselves out of it. But what if we didn't? What if we gave ourselves permission not to talk ourselves out of it? What if that one next step, we actually said, I'm going to do this step and then I'll take another, but I'm going to take this step first, that there's part of me that really has this knowing, and follow what feels right.
Follow what feels right and take the first step and give yourself permission and compassion while you're doing it. I truly agree with that. Sometimes we don't even want to take this first step. We want to take 10 at once. Then we don't take the 10 and we just stay at square one and don't move. And I agree with you as taking the first step. And I strongly believe in self reflection. I strongly believe in going back and always reanalyzing ourselves, searching ourselves for what's going on the inside. How are we feeling? Are we doing the right things? Are we taking the right measures to make sure that I'm giving myself permission to be Carmen, to be Janelle, to be Jen, and to be there for myself and not wait for that moment where I have to scream out and say to somebody, I need help, because I've been doing that self work. So, Carmen, If you are looking in the mirror right now, picture me being the mirror. At your young age, at your young age, your younger self today, right before the life changing traumatic moment happened for you, what would you say to her?
I would say to her that it's going to be okay. And I would thank her because she's made it that far. And I know that she can keep making it.
You believe that. And I know you believe that. And that is, I have something called the mirror method. And I think it's so important for us to look at ourselves in the mirror and look really deep and tell our internal child how we feel. Because it's like a reminder, you're okay. And you're going to continue being okay. Just continue moving. Don't stop. And I truly believe that your younger self is proud of Carmen for running to the farm. I truly believe that your younger self is very proud for you making that first step that we continue to tell everybody to make. Like stepping outside and just stepping outside of what we already know and learning something different. So I love what you said to your younger self. And I know your younger self is very proud of Big Carmen now. I have a special segment. It's a game called Rapid Fire.
Great.
I'm going to ask you some questions,
Mm-hmm.
and in one sentence or less, you're going to answer the first thing that comes to your mind and heart.
Great.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So, we are playing Rapid Fire. Say whatever comes to your heart.
Okay. Ready.
What's one word that describes you today?
Grace. And I have, okay, I know it's one word, but I have to say, because you mentioned this earlier, that's the name of the most amazing teacher of all the horses I've ever had. And she's really like my best friend and soulmate in horse form. So that's a very important word for me too. Thank you.
That's also my favorite word, Grace. Favorite book or quote that changed your life?
Mm. No one is free until we are all free. And I don't know who said it, but it wasn't me. And I love it.
I love that. I love that. One thing horses have taught you that humans often forget.
That vulnerability is strength.
Mm, wow. What's your go-to self-care routine?
Walking, stretching, drinking water, and doing nothing.
Wow, I'm gonna have to try the doing nothing part. I'm gonna try that one. If you could say one thing to the generation after you, what would that be?
I did my best, and I hope it's easier for you.
Finish this sentence. Healing is,
Necessary.
healing is necessary. And I'll finish that by saying healing is yours. It is personal. And don't let anybody rob you of that permission that you give to yourself to heal and love yourself because you were supposed to. Carmen, it was an absolute pleasure sitting with you today.
You as well.
One, I learned so much about horses and their power. You know, we hear so much like there's this word that everybody, when you hear horses, they say stallion because they're strong, but they're also gentle creatures. And we are. In nature, we are taught to be strong. From childhood, we're taught to be strong. You fall, you hurt yourself. Don't cry. Be strong. You're okay. But also, it's okay to be human. It's okay to be gentle. It's okay to give yourself grace and be patient with yourself. We all have a gentle side. And I learned so much from you today. And I know our listeners had to have learned and pulled so much from you. You recharged me and you gave me a different side of hope, understanding, and healing. We look for people, we look for things, tangible things, and people to heal us and give us the right tools. But little did we know that there's so much healing and power in horses. The energy that we get from the earth and animals too. It's like, they say dog's a man's best friend. And I wasn't an animal girl, but I loved animals. Like I never owned any when I was younger. My mom said no to dogs. She always said she was gonna get birds, but we never ended up getting birds. And well, she got birds when I left. Interesting. But I have birds, and I get so much peace from them knowing that they're in the house and the energy. So I understand having a pet and finding solace in animals that people don't even realize. And I want to thank you so much for, again, accepting your calling and giving yourself permission to be in your calling and be your authentic self.
Thank you so much, Janelle. It was a delight to chat with you. And I really can feel that you're following your calling as well. And that's the best we can do and the most we can do. And it's everything we need to do. So thank you for being another one of those people in this world.
And thank you for giving me permission. You gave me more permission that I never knew I needed to give myself. And I'll share this with you because when you're building something, it's not easy. Let me like that easy word people are like, oh, you could just start a business, you could do this. It's not easy. If you want to start a business or anything, walking your purpose, you have to understand that there will be tests and there will be trials. And some days, you may only have one or two people listening to you. That's okay. That's a part of the building. And over the weekend, I had that reminder is that when we get a promise and we know that what we're doing is what we're supposed to be doing, some days will feel painful. And I was like, oh my goodness, am I doing the right thing? Do I need to rejig this? Do I need to change that? No, you're doing the right thing. I'm doing the right thing. So you gave me another form of permission that I needed to give myself. And I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for being on the platform and being a part of me growing this platform because it takes a village to do the work. And you are a part of the village. We are one. If there's anybody that wants to get in contact with you or know more about healing through horses and the coaching programs you have, how can they get in contact with you and reach out to you?
For sure. The best way would be our website, which is horsesensenorth.com, HORSESENSENORTH.com. There's a contact form there on the website. You can also find my email there. And we are also on social media if people want to be checking that out. But I think the website really gives a lot more kind of video and information about that, as well as ways to reach us directly.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Carmen. To my first Canadian, to my first Canadian guest, it was a pleasure to be in your presence. And we'll continue to shake Canada up in the world and continue to do the work because
Thank
the world
you.
needs you. And thank you for sharing your compassion and your heart.